Hello to all our family members joining us online. I'm very happy that we can come together online to learn. First of all, I would like to thank Heavenly Grace and the virtue of the Masters, thank the blessings of the great Emperor Miaoji, as well as the senior leaders, the leaders, and all the teachers for their guidance, which has given me this opportunity to learn together with everyone. Today, the topic I will be sharing is, happiness is not about having more. Happiness is not about having more. Let's begin with this question. Is this the perfect life you want? Do you know that from childhood to adulthood, we have constantly been taught to work hard and strive forward, to become the person that society expects us to be? But have you ever stopped to think about this question, that version of yourself who was once curious about the world, who loved life, and who longed for freedom? At what point did that self gradually disappear into the routine of a 9-to-5 daily life? So today, we are going to talk about a very core concept, which is that happiness truly is not about having more. Today's content will roughly follow these directions. First, we will look at the endless pursuit of modern people. Then, we will discuss from a psychological perspective why having more does not equal being happier. Next, we will learn the wisdom of less is more and learn to redefine your wealth. Finally, I will share several practical action steps to help us move toward a simpler and freer life. First, the first part is the endless pursuit. Many people probably have this feeling. Without realizing it, we fall into a cycle of constant comparison and never being satisfied. All of this usually begins with a feeling that we are all too familiar with. What feeling is that? It is the feeling of not being as good as others. Whether in academics, at work, or even just scrolling through social media on our phones and seeing other people's glamorous lives, a sense of envy always arises. Once this mindset begins, the next step is falling into anxiety, and then doubting whether we are working hard enough, wondering if we will be left behind by society. And even if we do achieve a certain goal, even after buying something we wanted, that brief happiness is quickly locked away by external factors, and we return again to a feeling of dissatisfaction. This process is like a hamster trapped on a wheel, running continuously. We run very fast, we chase with great effort, but in reality, we are just spinning in place, going nowhere, and even forgetting why we started in the first place. From here, let's reflect. In fact, modern people are under tremendous pressure. When we take time off to relax, especially during long holidays, the roads are often full of traffic because we all want to go out and relieve stress. But are you also one of those people whose good mood for traveling gets ruined by traffic jams along the way? Sometimes when we go shopping, we start out full of anticipation and joy, but as we keep walking around and around, we end up exhausted and return to what we call a blue mood, that is, a depressed mood. I feel like I am just like that, running and chasing, but getting nowhere, and not even obtaining the happiness I expected or wanted. All right, next there is a story that perfectly explains this contradiction. Let's take a look at what kind of story it is. There was an investment banker who, while on vacation, came to a seaside and saw a fisherman leisurely fishing. Why did he pay attention to this fisherman? Because the fisherman's skills were excellent, and the fish on his boat were all of top quality. So he said to the fisherman, "I think you should work harder, expand your fishing team, and then take your company public. After that, your retirement life will be more comfortable, and then you can leisurely fish here by the seaside." The fisherman smiled and told him, "Then may I ask, am I not already living a comfortable life, fishing leisurely right now?" From this story, we are led to reflect, are many of us missing the happiness and joy of the present moment for the sake of a distant future? Just like what we mentioned earlier, we happily plan to go on a trip today, but perhaps during the traffic jam, we become upset, feel irritated, and end up ruining the good mood of the trip. So the immortals and enlightened beings compassionately tell us, what is happiness? When we are sick or physically impaired, we envy those who are healthy. When we are healthy, we wish for more wealth, and also for beauty in our body and appearance. And when we have those, we go on to pursue fame and status. Then, after gaining wealth and fame, we start to envy those who live relaxed and carefree lives. We are never satisfied. There is a poem that says, "Others ride horses while I ride a donkey. Upon careful thought, I feel inferior. But when I turn back and see a man pushing a cart, I realize that while I may not measure up to those above me, I still have more than those below." This poem tells us that people often have this sense of dissatisfaction. For example, when we have shoes to wear, we start to envy others who wear branded shoes and clothes. But when you see those people wearing branded items, perhaps they are someone with a physical disability, and they envy those who can walk. So sometimes, when we envy others, we do not understand the actual pressures they carry or their real situation. These examples show us this phenomenon of constant chasing. But the most fundamental question is, why does having so much not make us feel happier? Behind this, there are several interesting psychological reasons. So now, we move on to the second part, why having more does not equal being happier. First, the first one is adaptation bias. Have you noticed that when we buy a phone, or even a long-desired item or piece of clothing, that short-lived happiness quickly disappears? This comes from the fact that humans have a very strong ability to adapt, so the initial excitement fades quickly, and we return to our baseline level of happiness. That is the first point, adaptation bias. The second interesting psychological factor is choice fatigue. We all think that the more choices we have, the more freedom and happiness we gain, but the opposite is true. When we turn on TV channels or Netflix, we keep choosing and choosing but cannot decide, and after half an hour passes, we still cannot find a program we want to watch. Nowadays, there are also many diverse courses, especially with the current emphasis on diversified learning and lifelong learning. There are many different types of courses and many helpful programs. Especially for children's education now, they are required to have diverse learning experiences. So whether we are choosing courses for our children or for ourselves, sometimes having too many options does not bring freedom. Instead, it makes us more fatigued and causes us to lose the joy of learning in the present moment. The third part is hidden costs. This is also the part we most often overlook. Do you know that when we are buying things, we only see and focus on the price on the label, but we very rarely estimate the time and energy it will cost behind it? Every item we buy, whether it is clothing or utensils, needs to be regularly organized, maintained, and cared for. So because of this, sometimes we think about how, in a moment of impulse, we bought certain things, for example fitness equipment or cooking utensils. Since cooking is very popular now, there are some microwave ovens, steam ovens, and air fryers that everyone is crazy about on the market. And then there are also new products with built-in electric grilling functions that keep being introduced again and again. Because of our momentary desire, we keep buying new products. But have you noticed that when we bring so many things home, they not only take up our living space, but also make us spend more attention and more mental energy on these products? This is something we often ignore. This is also the hidden cost behind them. Alright, now that we understand why the points above help us see why more choices, instead of making us happier, actually make us so tired, and why they do not bring happiness, this naturally brings us to the next step. How do we solve this? So next, let us learn together the wisdom of less is more. This is also a turning point in the topic we are discussing today, and that is the wisdom of less is more. This is a fundamental way of thinking. Do you know that the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates had already told us a long time ago that the secret to happiness is not in seeking more, but in cultivating the ability to enjoy less? Let us look at this picture. When we are no longer bound by endless desires, sometimes a simple life can actually bring true ease and joy. Look at the picture on the left. When our home space is filled with books, utensils, and all kinds of objects, can that warm sunlight still shine into the house? The light, the energy, and the overall cleanliness and comfort of the room are all greatly reduced. So why is it that people today, even when material things are not lacking, still feel so lacking? And why do they so urgently need organizers and decluttering specialists? This is the reason. Because today's people have very convenient access to material goods, and their purchasing power is also very sufficient, so without realizing it, they keep buying, and stockpiling. When they see things, they do not think that they may already have this item at home. It is not need, but want. Even the value of an item becomes this: as long as I like it, as long as I want it, I must get it right away. As a result, our physical space gets stuffed full, our money gets spent away, and some people, if they do not manage their finances properly, may also become paycheck-to-paycheck people. So when we are no longer bound by endless desires, sometimes less is more, and our lives instead bring us a more genuine sense of ease and joy. That feeling sounds wonderful, but how exactly do we put it into practice? The key lies in the fourth part. Next, let us look at how to put it into practice, how to redefine your wealth, and how to shift the focus from the outside to the inside. Look here, there is a very clear contrast. On the left is the definition we are familiar with, our traditional definition. Success is pursuing success outwardly. We believe that pursuing more wealth, higher status, and more material things means success. But true long-lasting success is the success on the right, which explores inwardly and pursues inner peace, inner relationships, and growth. There is a study by Dr. Howard Kenson. When he was 24 years old, under the theme of his doctoral dissertation, The Secret Code to Happiness, he conducted 10,000 questionnaires and carried out a 2-month follow-up to ask the public, what do you think the secret code to happiness is? This questionnaire listed 5 choices: very happy, happy, average, painful, and very painful. Then, out of those 10,000 questionnaires, only about half were returned within 2 months, meaning more than 5,000 responses, but only 121 of them reached the answer of very happy. This doctor was extremely shocked. Out of more than 10,000 questionnaires, only 121 people had a feeling of very happiness. Then, after conducting further interviews, he found that more than 70 of them came from ordinary working-class people, while more than 50 came from successful people in the city. Very simply, these ordinary class citizens were usually content with a modest life and did not place too many demands on material living. They felt that life was very sweet and very satisfying. The other more than 50 people were successful people in their careers, and they felt very happy because of their career success. 20 years later, this doctor wanted to trace back again to see whether those 121 people who once felt very happy still had the same result. As it turned out, among the original more than 70 ordinary class citizens, 2 had already passed away, but the others were still able to maintain a feeling of very happiness. On the other hand, among the 50 career success comparison group members, only 9 remained, still maintaining a state of very happiness. So why did the career success group lose so many people who were very happy? The reason may be changes in their company or family environment, causing them no longer to have the same successful conditions as before, and therefore the number dropped from 50 very happy people to only 9. So what does this study tell us? All happiness supported by external material things cannot last. It will disappear as the external material disappears. Only the tranquility and inner calm of the mind, which in turn produce a sense of physical and mental well-being, are the true source of happiness. This is what the first study tells us. So what is the long-lasting happiness of inner exploration? It includes inner peace, harmonious interpersonal relationships, work-life balance, personal growth, and building meaningful connections with the people around us. These items are all very important parts of success through inner exploration. So what is the new view of wealth? True wealth is not having more. It is being able to be content, to pursue the meaning of life, and to create self-value. This includes many entrepreneurs in our society today. While earning wealth, they also do not forget to give back to society. For example, when the Hualien flood happened in Taiwan not long ago, we also saw many volunteers, especially the Crane King from Hsinchu. He also offered help at the very first moment, asking his employees to drive his cranes to the disaster area immediately to help the victims rebuild their homes. I think this is a part that deserves to be seen, and also a part that all of us are worth learning from. So a new, integrated view of happiness is that, under the condition of meeting basic life needs, we are able to take action, build relationships, and value personal growth. This is the kind of wealth concept that can truly bring deep satisfaction. All right. Next, let us look at what kinds of things can truly sustain happiness and nourish the heart. Next, I would like to lead everyone to learn together what practical methods we can use to move toward a simpler and freer life and to find a way to inner peace. That brings us to a very practical concept that I think many of us have probably heard of before, danshari, or decluttering and letting go. The practice of danshari is also a purification of both space and the mind. So what are the core points? What does discard mean? Discard means cutting off unnecessary things from entering our lives. Let go means letting go of items that no longer suit you and are no longer helpful to you. And separate means separating yourself from attachment to and bondage by things. These 3 key steps help you understand your own value. From these 3 steps, and from the core idea behind them, we are meant to understand that our value has never been defined by the things we own. Then what comes next? How do we regain the initiative in life? That is, how do we make our wishes come true? First, the first thing we talk about is discard. How do we discard these unnecessary things that occupy our living space? We need to evaluate our actual situation and examine which things can truly bring value to us and which ones are only taking up our space and creating clutter. Then, after reviewing and evaluating, we sort things into categories and organize them into what we only bought because of a momentary impulse and what we truly need. Before buying something next time, let us think carefully and not bring it home right away. We should consider the item's long-term value. Then we rearrange, say goodbye to the past, and break free from all these entanglements. The objects we cling to and the attachments that bind us, sometimes it is not because we lack something, but because we are afraid. We are afraid of not enough, and that fear leads to hoarding. The same is true from a psychological perspective. Because we are afraid of being seen as weak or looked down on by others, we put on a mask, and we often interact with people while wearing that mask. The fourth part is that after evaluating, organizing, and re-examining our inner selves, we naturally hope to put this kind of idea into practice in daily life. We hope that through a simple lifestyle, we can bring lightness and freedom to the mind, and also become more focused on the things that are meaningful to our lives. After understanding the wisdom of less is more, and after learning this lifestyle concept of Danshari, we begin to see that perhaps in the past we only focused on our own lack and our own inadequacy. We often felt lacking through comparison, and then we gradually shift into focusing on our abundance, becoming aware of our inner self and aware of ourselves, and finding our own value. In this way, life shifts from an outwardly focused false self to an inwardly focused true self. When we focus on this inner mindset and pay attention to ourselves, we learn some mindful ways of thinking, we learn acceptance and understanding, and therefore when emotions arise, we can care for our own emotions. Then, from daily life, we begin to value the worth and meaning of our own lives. In the past, we may have thought that simply being alive was enough, that living through this life was all there was. But now we understand that when we came into this world, we were given a unique mission. Through learning, through reflection, and through studying this course, we slowly come to understand our own value and then continue to learn. For example, right now we have Dharma centers in many places. Within the Dharma centers there are many advanced classes, as well as many academies, or we can also take part in online synchronized advanced classes. The courses are very diverse. There are weekday classes, weekend classes, and even for those who are busier, they can still join our once-a-month advanced true cultivation class to learn. Through learning again and again, we come to understand that after learning, we still need to discover our own importance through actual action. In the past, perhaps before doing anything, we would use finances as our main consideration and as a way to compare how much we ourselves were contributing. But gradually, we learn to offer what we have learned, and little by little we follow the footsteps of our seniors, learning to build good relationships with others, and then spreading the good knowledge we have learned. Slowly and gradually, what once was money, time, and resources that we might have only kept for ourselves will, after learning, become something else. What happens then? We interact more with others, we spread good and wholesome knowledge, and we elevate our self-worth, so that this positive energy can continue onward. In our society, there are many philanthropists who are truly worth learning from as role models. For example, even in a life of great scarcity, they can still devote all of their money and financial resources to helping others who are even more in need than they are. Let me give you an example. There is an art doctor named Huang Meilin. She had cerebral palsy since childhood, but because her parents used a modern and thoughtful approach to raising her and gave her abundant love, her path of learning was always filled with sunshine, laughter, and joy. In the end, she became an art doctor and was able to travel everywhere to give lectures and share her story. Once, someone in the audience asked her, "Have you looked like this since you were little? Then how do you see yourself?" And she gave this classic answer: "I only look at what I have. I do not look at what I do not have." What a shocking statement, and one that gives everyone something to learn from. Sometimes, in the process of comparison and constant chasing, we forget ourselves. In fact, we are already the most blessed, the most happy versions of ourselves, but we forget to look inward. Instead, we keep chasing outward again and again, and as a result, we make ourselves unhappy every day. Next, let us look at the concept of good deeds and happiness. Whether in learning or on the path toward success, inner motivation and good deeds are the key to obtaining true happiness. Especially in Dharma centers, we have many teams. Just now, I gave the example of the Hualien disaster in Taiwan in September 2025. The residents of Guangfu village fell into the distress of having their homes destroyed overnight, but our fellow practitioners in the Dharma Center immediately formed teams and went to assist in rescue efforts the very next day. In addition, our young students, whenever summer vacation or winter vacation arrives, or during holiday periods, form teams to go abroad to orphanages to give their support, accompany the children, and learn through exchange. Also, at our Taiwan headquarters Dharma Center, there are several teams dedicated to distributing supplies to indigenous tribal communities, while also providing courses and activities that help uplift the spirit. These are called tribal care activities under the theme Opening New Hope. This is the practical action we often see from our fellow practitioners and teams. We have said so much about good deeds. Next, I would like to share several practical methods and concepts of happiness to help everyone implement this code of happiness. Happiness needs to be learned, and joy also needs practice and commitment in order to deepen. Giving is what makes excellence possible. So, the direction of the wind determines the direction of the wind, but the direction of a person is determined by the person themselves. Next, I will show everyone a picture of a child playing basketball. Everyone must be wondering why I suddenly put up a picture of a child playing basketball. We all know that when doing sports, especially during the process of dribbling, if we want the ball to go powerfully and accurately into the basket, we need to dribble, crouch down, and then bravely take the shot. First, we must let go of the basketball in order to allow it to rebound upward with force. After catching the ball and shooting, only then can the basketball go accurately into the basket. So through the process of shooting a basketball into the hoop, I would like to offer a little mnemonic here to help everyone remember how to obtain this code of happiness: gratitude, release, and give. First, we must bravely let go of the basketball so that its rebound force can be activated, and then it can be accurately shot into the hoop. Corresponding to our code of happiness, the first thing is to know how to be grateful. Gratitude is the source of happiness. We say that in life, either we learn or we gain. If we are grateful every day, we will feel content, and once we are content, we will be very happy. Then we can let go of our ego attachments and the restraints in our hearts, and simplify what is complicated. We mentioned earlier that Danshari is not only about discarding things and decluttering space and material possessions, but also about letting go of the attachments in our hearts. It means cutting off the bonds we cannot release and the things we cannot work out. After Danshari, we then invest ourselves in learning. At this point, the outward connection we pursue is good interpersonal relationships and meaningful connections, including connections between men and women, between husband and wife, within the family, within society, and among friends. Through continuous learning and investing in self-improvement, we bring good deeds into these relationships and put them into practice, allowing the energy of goodness to continue endlessly. We say that by learning, we come to know our own shortcomings, and by teaching, we come to know our difficulties. Through interactions with others, we come to understand our own imperfections and inadequacies, and then we learn further and discover the meaning and value of our lives. Therefore, the learning of Danshari is not only about objects, but also about the evolution of our hearts and minds. True freedom comes from letting go of unnecessary attachments. May we all be able to gain freedom through discarding, regain the initiative in our lives, and live a life that is more fulfilling, more balanced, and more joyful. I wish all the families watching online peace, auspiciousness, and good fortune. That concludes the course I brought to everyone today. Thank you all.